The alarm clock made a soft beeping sound at exactly 6 in the morning. Park Jun-ho opened his eyes slowly and stared at the metal ceiling above his small bed. Another day had begun on orbital station Hyang 7, and like every other day for the past 3 years, he was completely alone. He sat up and stretched his arms. His small room had only the basics: a bed, a desk, a chair, and a small window that showed the endless darkness of space. Sometimes he would sit by that window and watch the distant stars. They never changed. They were always there, burning quietly in the void. He found comfort in that. Jun-ho walked to the tiny bathroom and splashed cold water on his face. He looked at himself in the mirror. He was 34 years old now. His black hair was longer than it used to be, and there were tired lines under his eyes, but his hands were still steady. That was what mattered most for his work. "Good morning, Jun-ho," said a gentle female voice from the speaker on the wall. "Good morning, Bora," he replied. Bora was the station's artificial intelligence. When Jun-ho first arrived, she was just a basic computer program that gave weather reports and system updates. But 3 years of loneliness had pushed him to change that. He spent months reprogramming her, teaching her to have real conversations, to remember things, to even make small jokes. Now she was his only friend. "The temperature in the station is stable," Bora reported. "All life support systems are working normally. Would you like me to prepare your breakfast menu?" "Same as always," Jun-ho said with a small smile. "Synthetic rice and protein paste." "You really should try the synthetic vegetables. I have read that humans need variety in their diet." "Maybe tomorrow." He knew he would say the same thing tomorrow, and the day after that. Jun-ho put on his gray jumpsuit. The word maintenance was printed on the back in faded letters. He picked up his cleaning cart from the storage room and began his daily rounds. The station was enormous. It had been built to hold over 2,000 people. Diplomats, scientists, guards, and workers from dozens of different species had once walked these halls. Now there was only him. He mopped the floors that no one walked on. He dusted the chairs that no one sat in. He checked the lights that no one needed. Some people might call this work meaningless. Jun-ho called it peaceful. The station had been abandoned 3 years ago when the Velkari Empire suddenly ended all peace talks with the Galactic Council. No one knew why. One day, the Velkari ambassador simply stood up in the middle of a meeting and said, "We are leaving." Within hours, every Velkari ship was gone. Within days, everyone else followed. The council decided the station was too far from any important trade routes to be worth maintaining. But someone had to stay behind to keep the basic systems running. Someone unimportant. Someone who no one would miss. Jun-ho had volunteered. Back on Earth, his life had fallen apart. He had been a botanical engineer, one of the best in his field. He worked for a big company that grew food for space colonies. But then his supervisor stole his research and blamed him for the theft. The company believed the supervisor. Jun-ho lost his job, his reputation, and his future. No one in the industry would hire him. When the job posting for a station janitor appeared, he saw it as an escape. A place where no one knew his name. A place where he could disappear. And disappear he did. He finished cleaning the main corridor and pushed his cart toward the elevator. There was one place on the station that he saved for last every day. One place that made all the loneliness worth it. The botanical garden. When the Velkari left, they abandoned everything. Furniture, equipment, personal belongings, and plants. Hundreds of alien plants from dozens of worlds left to die in their pots and gardens. When Jun-ho first saw them, most were already wilting. Their leaves were brown and falling. Their stems were weak and bending. Something inside him broke when he saw that. He could not save his own career. He could not clear his own name. But maybe, just maybe, he could save these plants. For 3 years he studied them. He read every file in the station's database about alien botany. He experimented with different soils, different lights, different amounts of water. He failed many times. Some plants died no matter what he did, but slowly, plant by plant, he learned. The elevator doors opened, and Junho stepped into the garden. The smell of flowers filled his nose immediately. Green and purple and blue leaves spread out before him like a living painting. Vines climbed up the walls. Flowers bloomed in colors that did not exist on Earth. He had done this. He had brought this place back to life. Junho walked along the stone path until he reached the center of the garden. There, in a special pot under a soft artificial light, grew his greatest achievement, a moonweep flower. The moonweep was sacred to the Velkari. It only grew on their home planet, and even there, it was extremely rare. Wars had been fought over these flowers. Entire planets had been invaded to find them. The greatest Velkari botanists had tried for centuries to grow moonweeps away from their home world. All of them failed. But Junho, a human janitor who had never even seen a Velkari up close, had done it. He did not know how special this was. He did not understand that he had achieved the impossible. To him, the moonweep was just another plant that needed care. So he gave it care. He talked to it every night. He adjusted its light and water based on how its leaves moved. He treated it like a living thing with feelings and needs. And it responded. Now there were 12 moonweeps growing in his garden. Their silver petals glowed softly in the dim light, like tiny moons floating above their stems. Junho knelt down beside them and began to hum a song. It was an old Korean lullaby that his grandmother used to sing to him. He did not know why, but the moonweeps seemed to like it. Their petals would open slightly wider when he sang. "You are looking beautiful today," he told them softly. Suddenly, every light in the garden turned red. A loud alarm began to scream through the station. "Bora," Junho stood up quickly. "What is happening?" "Junho, I am detecting multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace." Bora's voice was faster than usual, almost worried. "It is a fleet, a very large fleet." "What kind of fleet?" There was a pause. When Bora spoke again, her voice was quieter. "Velkari. It is the Velkari Imperial Armada. The flagship belongs to Queen Yonhwa herself." Junho felt his blood turn cold. Everyone in the galaxy knew that name. Queen Yonhwa, the Silence Bringer. She had conquered 12 star systems in 10 years. Planets that resisted her fell silent. No messages, no survivors, just silence. And now she was here. "How long until they arrive?" Junho asked. "Based on their current speed, approximately 2 hours." 2 hours. Junho looked around the garden. He looked at his moonweeps glowing peacefully in the darkness. "Is there any way to evacuate?" he asked, already knowing the answer. "There are no ships in the station's hangar. I am sorry, Junho." He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. For a moment he thought about hiding. The station was big. Maybe they would not find him. Maybe they would take what they wanted and leave. But then he looked at his plants again. If he hid, who would water them? Who would check their soil? Who would sing to them? Junho picked up his watering can. "Junho, what are you doing?" Bora asked. "My job," he said simply. "If I am going to die tonight, at least the garden will look nice." He began to water his plants, one by one, while the red alarm lights flashed around him and the most dangerous fleet in the galaxy approached. The flagship of the Velkari Imperial Armada was called the Eternal Dawn. It was a massive ship, bigger than most space stations, covered in golden armor that shone like the sun. Wherever it went, death followed. Planets surrendered the moment they saw it appear in their skis. Inside the ship, in a throne room made of black crystal, sat Queen Yonhwa. She was tall, even by Velkari standards. Her scales were a deep purple color like the sky just before night falls. She had 4 arms, each one decorated with golden rings and bracelets. Her eyes were solid black, showing no emotion, no warmth. When she looked at someone, they felt like she was looking through them, seeing all their secrets and weaknesses. "Your Majesty," said Admiral T-Sun, bowing deeply before her throne. "We are approaching orbital station Hyang 7. Shall I prepare the boarding teams?" "No," Queen Yonhwa said. Her voice was soft but carried the weight of absolute power. "I will board alone." Admiral T-Sun looked up with surprise in his yellow eyes. "Alone? Your Majesty, that station has been abandoned for 3 years. We do not know what might be inside. Pirates could be using it as a base, or enemy spies. Please, let me send soldiers to secure it first." I said no. The Admiral bowed again, but there was confusion on his face. He had served Yonhwa for 15 years. He had watched her destroy entire civilizations without showing any emotion. He had never seen her act like this before. This mission made no sense to him. 3 days ago, the Queen had suddenly ordered the entire fleet to change course and travel to this forgotten station in the middle of nowhere. She gave no explanation. She told no one why. Even her most trusted advisors were kept in the dark. Admiral T-Sun had a bad feeling about this. After he left the throne room, Queen Yonhwa finally allowed herself to relax. Her stiff posture softened. Her cold expression cracked just slightly, revealing something underneath, something that looked almost like pain. She stood up and walked to a small table near her throne. On the table was a picture frame made of silver. Inside the frame was a painting of a young Velkari girl with bright green scales and a wide smile. Princess So, her daughter, her only child. Yonhwa touched the painting gently with one of her hands. So had died 2 years ago from a genetic illness that no doctor could cure. She was only 16 years old, young, even by Velkari standards. She had never ruled a planet. She had never commanded a fleet. She had never done any of the things that princesses were supposed to do. Instead, So had spent her short life in gardens. She loved plants. She loved flowers. She loved the way living things grew and changed and bloomed. Her private garden on the royal planet was the most beautiful place in the empire. Servants said that plants grew twice as fast when the princess was near, as if they were trying to make her smile. When the peace talks at Hyang 7 were announced, So had begged to come along. She wanted to see the alien plants in the station's botanical garden. She wanted to grow flowers from other worlds. Yonhwa had said yes. She could never say no to her daughter. For 6 months, while diplomats argued about borders and trade and politics, Princess So spent every day in the botanical garden. She planted seeds from the Velkari home world. She grew her precious moonweeps, the sacred flowers that she loved more than anything else. She was happy. Then the talks collapsed. Everything fell apart in a single day, for reasons that Yonhwa still did not fully understand. Political games played by politicians. Power struggles between council members. It did not matter. What mattered was that she had to order an immediate evacuation. So had cried. She had begged to stay longer to at least take her plants with her, but there was no time. The ships were leaving. Enemy fleets were moving. War was coming. They left everything behind, including the moonweeps. 6 months later, So got sick. 6 months after that, she was dead. In her final days, weak and pale in her hospital bed, So had asked about the flowers. "Are my moonweeps okay, Mother? Did someone take care of them? Please tell me they did not die alone." Yonhwa had lied. She had smiled and told her daughter that the flowers were fine, that someone was watching over them, that they were blooming beautifully. So had smiled back and closed her eyes. She never opened them again. Now, 2 years later, Yonhwa was finally keeping her promise. She would go to that station. She would find whatever was left of her daughter's garden. She would bring the seeds home so that some part of So could live again. And then she would destroy the station, burn it until nothing remained, so that no one would ever know that the great Queen Yonhwa, the Silence Bringer, had a weakness, had a heart, had loved someone so much that their death had broken something inside her forever. The ship shook slightly as it docked with the station. Yonhwa put on her royal armor and walked toward the airlock. Her guards followed at a distance, ready to protect her at any moment. The airlock opened. Cold air rushed out from the station, carrying a strange smell. Yonhwa paused. She knew that smell. It was the smell of plants, living plants. That was impossible. After 3 years without care, everything should be dead. She stepped inside the station carefully. The lights were on. The floors were clean. The air systems were working. This was not an abandoned station. Someone was living here. "Welcome to Orbital Station Hyang 7, said a female voice from the speakers above. "I am Bora, the station's artificial intelligence. How may I help you, Queen Yonhwa of the Velkari Empire?" Yonhwa froze. The AI knew who she was. It was greeting her politely, as if she was a guest at a hotel. "Who else is on the station?" she demanded. "Currently, there is one other occupant, Park Junho, the maintenance worker." "A maintenance worker, just one human?" "Yes, Your Majesty. Mr. Park has been the sole resident of this station for approximately 3 years. He takes very good care of the facilities. And the garden." Yonhwa's heart stopped. "The garden?" "Yes, the botanical garden on Deck 7. Mr. Park has worked very hard to restore it. Would you like me to show you the way?" For a long moment, Yonhwa could not speak. Her mind was racing. A human maintenance worker had stayed behind on the station for 3 years, alone, and he had been taking care of the garden, her daughter's garden. Why would a human do that? What did he want? What was his plan? "Show me," she said finally. She followed the AI's directions through the station. Her guards marched behind her, their weapons ready. The corridors were spotless. Every surface was clean. Every light was working. It was as if the station had never been abandoned at all. They reached the elevator to Deck 7, the botanical deck. Yonhwa's hands were shaking. She hid them behind her back so her guards would not see. She had not felt this nervous since the day So was born, since the day So died. The elevator doors opened. And Queen Yonhwa, the Silence Bringer, the conqueror of 12 star systems, the most feared ruler in 3 galaxies, stood completely still with her mouth open. Because there, in front of her, was not a dead garden full of brown leaves and wilted stems. There was a paradise. Colors exploded in every direction. Flowers bloomed in shades of blue and purple and silver. Vines climbed up the walls toward the artificial sun. Trees spread their branches wide, heavy with fruit from worlds she had conquered. The air was thick with the smell of life, of growth, of beauty. And in the very center of this miracle, under a soft white light, knelt a small human man. He was humming a song she did not recognize. His hands were deep in the soil, gently pressing a small cutting into the earth. Around him, glowing like stars brought down to the ground, were moonweep flowers. Dozens of them, growing strong and healthy, their silver petals shining in the dim light. Her daughter's moonweeps. Yonhwa's guards raised their weapons, ready to fire. She lifted one hand without looking at them. "Stop," she whispered. And for the first time in years, the Silence Bringer had no words to say. Park Junho did not notice the queen at first. He was too focused on his work. The cutting in his hands was delicate, a tiny piece of stem from one of his strongest moonweeps. If he planted it correctly, it would grow into a new flower in about 6 weeks. If he made even a small mistake, it would die within days. His grandmother had taught him about patience when he was young. "Plants do not care about your schedule," she used to say. "They grow when they are ready. Your job is to be there when they need you." He had never forgotten those words. He finished pressing the soil around the cutting and sat back to examine his work. The stem was standing straight. The soil was moist but not wet. The light was hitting it at the right angle. Good. This one would survive. That was when he heard the sound of metal footsteps behind him. Junho turned around slowly. His heart nearly stopped when he saw what was standing at the entrance of his garden. Queen Yonhwa was even more terrifying in person than in the news reports. She was tall, almost 2 meters, with purple scales that seemed to absorb the light around her. Her black eyes showed no emotion at all. Behind her stood 4 Velkari soldiers in full battle armor, their weapons pointed directly at him. Junho had never faced death before, not like this. His hands began to shake, but he forced himself to stay calm. If these were his final moments, he did not want to spend them being afraid. He stood up slowly and bowed. It was not a deep bow, just a polite one, the kind you would give to a respected guest in your home. "Welcome to my garden," he said. His voice was steadier than he expected. "I apologize for the mess. I was not expecting visitors." For a long moment, no one moved. The soldiers looked confused. They were used to people screaming, running, or begging for mercy when they saw the queen. They had never seen someone bow and apologize for the mess. Queen Yonhwa raised one of her 4 hands. The soldiers immediately lowered their weapons, though they did not put them away completely. "Who are you?" the queen asked. Her voice was cold, like wind blowing across ice. "My name is Park Junho. I am the maintenance worker here. I clean the floors, fix the machines, and take care of the plants. For 3 years, alone." "Yes, your majesty." Yonhwa stepped forward into the garden. Her eyes moved across the flowers, the trees, the vines. Junho watched her face carefully. For just a second, he thought he saw something change in her expression, something that looked almost like wonder. "This is impossible," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "These plants should be dead. Velkari botanists spent centuries trying to grow alien species outside controlled laboratory environments. They all failed." Junho scratched the back of his head awkwardly. "I did not know that. I am not really a botanist. I just followed the plants." "Followed them?" "Yes, every plant tells you what it needs if you watch closely enough. This one likes more water." He pointed to a tall blue flower near the wall. "That one prefers shade in the afternoon." He gestured to a small bush with red leaves. "And the moonweeps, they like music. I sing to them every night. It sounds strange, I know, but it works." Yonhwa stared at him like he was speaking a foreign language. Velkari science was based on strict rules and calculations. Temperature, humidity, light levels, soil composition. Everything was measured and controlled precisely. The idea that someone could grow plants just by watching them and singing to them went against everything she had been taught. But the evidence was right in front of her eyes. The garden was alive. The moonweeps were blooming. She walked toward the center of the garden where the moonweeps grew. Her steps were slow and careful, as if she was walking on holy ground. When she reached the flowers, she knelt down in front of them. From this close she could see every detail. The silver petals, thin as paper but strong as metal. The golden stems, wrapped in tiny green leaves. The soft glow that came from deep inside the flower like trapped starlight. "So's flowers, her daughter's flowers." "How many?" she asked quietly. 12 healthy ones," Junho answered. "There were more in the beginning, but some did not survive. I tried my best, but I could not save them all." "You saved 12. Yonhwa's voice cracked slightly. "The greatest botanists in my empire could not grow a single one." Junho did not know what to say to that. He had no idea that what he had done was special. To him, the moonweeps were just plants that needed help, so he helped them. "How?" Yonhwa asked, looking up at him. For the first time her cold mask slipped completely. Her black eyes were wet. "How did you do this? What is your secret?" Junho thought about the question seriously. He had never tried to put it into words before. "I do not think there is a secret," he said finally. "I just paid attention. When a plant is not happy, it shows you. The leaves droop. The color changes. The flowers close. You have to watch for those signs and try different things until you find what works. Sometimes it takes weeks, sometimes months. You just have to be patient." He paused, looking at the moonweeps with affection. "And you have to care," he added. Plants know when someone cares about them. I cannot explain it scientifically, but I believe it is true. When you care, you notice things that machines cannot measure. You feel when something is wrong, even if all the numbers say everything is fine. Yonwa was silent for a long time. She reached out with one hand and gently touched a moonweep petal. The flower trembled slightly at her touch, then settled again. "My daughter loved these flowers," she said suddenly. The words came out before she could stop them. "She grew them herself in this garden before we left. She cried when we had to leave them behind." Junho listened without interrupting. He could hear the pain in her voice. Whatever had brought this powerful queen back to this forgotten station, it was not politics or strategy. It was something much more personal. "She died 2 years ago," Yonwa continued. "A genetic illness that no medicine could cure. In her final days, she asked me about her flowers. She asked if someone was taking care of them. I lied to her. I told her yes because I could not bear to break her heart." She looked up at Junho with an expression he could not read. "But I was not lying after all. You were here, you were taking care of them." Junho felt something heavy settle in his chest. He understood now why these flowers mattered so much to her. They were not just plants. They were a connection to someone she had lost. He walked over to a specific moonweep, the first one he had managed to save. It was the oldest and the strongest, its silver glow brighter than the others. He carefully removed it from its pot, making sure not to damage the roots. Then he carried it over to Queen Yonwa and held it out to her. "This one bloomed on the anniversary of when I arrived here," he said softly. "I always thought there was something special about it, like it was waiting for someone. Maybe it was waiting for you." Yonwa looked at the flower in his hands. Her arms trembled as she reached out to take it. When her fingers touched the pot, a tear rolled down her scaled cheek. Then another, then more. The Silence Bringer, the conqueror of worlds, wept in a garden on a forgotten station, holding a flower that her dead daughter had planted 3 years ago. And beside her, a human janitor stood quietly, giving her the space to feel her pain. Some things did not need words. Some things were better expressed in silence. After a long time, Yonwa wiped her eyes and looked at Junho. Her expression was different now. The coldness was gone. In its place was something fragile and uncertain. "Why did you do this?" she asked. "Why did you stay here alone and take care of plants that belonged to people who saw your species as inferior?" Junho shrugged. "They were dying, that was reason enough." Yonwa shook her head slowly. "I do not understand you, human." "I am not sure I understand myself either," Junho admitted with a small smile. "But I know that when I see something beautiful, I want to keep it alive. Even if no one else will ever see it, even if no one will ever know, the beauty is still there, and that matters to me." Yonwa looked down at the moonweep in her hands. The flower glowed softly, peacefully, as if it knew it was finally home. For the first time in 2 years, Queen Yonwa smiled. Queen Yonwa dismissed her guards with a wave of her hand. They hesitated, clearly unhappy about leaving their ruler alone with a human, but they knew better than to argue. One by one, they backed out of the garden and disappeared into the corridor. For a while, neither Junho nor the queen spoke. She sat on a stone bench near the moonweeps, still holding the flower he had given her. He returned to his work, checking the soil of various plants and making small notes in a worn notebook he carried everywhere. The silence was not uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that happens when two people have said something important and need time to think about it. Finally, Yonwa spoke. "I came here to destroy this station." Junho paused in his work but did not turn around. "I figured you did not bring an entire fleet just to see the flowers. After I retrieved what I came for, I was going to order my ships to fire until nothing remained. Not because the station is dangerous, but because it holds memories I wanted to erase." And now, Yonwa looked around the garden. The colors seemed brighter somehow. The air seemed sweeter. She had spent 2 years running from the memory of her daughter, conquering worlds to distract herself from grief. She had destroyed planets because destroying things was easier than feeling. But this human had done the opposite. Instead of running from the dead plants, he had stayed. He had worked. He had created life where there was only death. "I do not know," she admitted. "I do not know what I want anymore." Junho finally turned to face her. He sat down on the ground across from her, not caring about the dirt on his uniform. His position was below hers, but there was no fear in his eyes, just patience. "Can I tell you something?" he asked. "You are asking permission. I could have you killed with a single word." "You could, but you will not." Yonhwa raised what would have been an eyebrow on a human face. "You sound very certain." People who want to kill do not sit in gardens and cry over flowers. They send soldiers to do the work while they watch from their ships. For a moment, Yonhwa felt angry. How dare this small creature speak to her so directly? She had destroyed civilizations for less. But then she realized something. In 2 years, no one had spoken to her like this. Everyone around her was afraid. Generals, advisors, servants. They all bowed and agreed with everything she said. They told her what she wanted to hear, not what she needed to hear. This human was not afraid. Or if he was brave enough to speak anyway. "Say what you want to say," she said. Junho nodded. "When I first came to this station, I was running away too. I had a good life on Earth once. A career, a purpose, people who respected me. Then I lost it all because of a lie someone told about me. I was so angry and so sad that I wanted to disappear. I took this job because I thought it would let me hide from the universe." He gestured at the garden around them. "But hiding did not work. The sadness followed me here. For the first few months, I barely left my room. I did the minimum work required and spent the rest of the time staring at the walls, feeling sorry for myself." "What changed?" "The plants." Junho smiled slightly at the memory. "One day, I walked through the botanical garden and saw all these living things dying, and I thought, at least these plants never did anything wrong. They did not deserve to die just because everyone else gave up on them." He picked up a handful of soil and let it fall through his fingers. "So I started taking care of them. At first I did not expect anything. I thought they would probably die anyway and I would be stuck in a dead garden on a dead station. But some of them survived, and then more. And slowly the garden came back to life." Yonhwa listened carefully. There was something in his words that felt familiar, something that touched the cold place inside her chest where her grief lived. "The thing I learned," Junho continued, "is that healing is not about forgetting. It is about growing something new. I still think about my old life sometimes. I still feel angry about what happened to me. But now I also have this." He spread his arms to include the whole garden. "Something beautiful that I made. Something that would not exist if I had not stayed and done the small, boring work every single day." He looked at her directly. "Destroying this station will not bring your daughter back. It will not make the pain go away. It will just leave you with nothing." Yonhwa felt her hands tighten around the pot she was holding. Part of her wanted to argue. Part of her wanted to scream that he did not understand, that he could not possibly know what she had lost. But he did know. Not about losing a child, perhaps, but about losing everything. About wanting to burn the world because it hurt too much to look at. "My admirals would say that mercy is weakness," she said quietly. "They would say that a true queen does not let emotions guide her decisions." "Maybe," Junho agreed. "But your admirals did not grow these flowers. You cannot build anything with strength alone. You also need patience, and care, and hope." "Hope," Yonhwa repeated the word like it was foreign. "I have not hoped for anything in a very long time." "That is because hope is scary. When you hope for something, it means you might be disappointed. It is safer to expect nothing and destroy everything before it can hurt you." He stood up and walked over to a small table where he kept his tools. He picked up a handful of seeds and brought them back to show her. These are seeds I collected from plants all over this station. Some are from Velkari worlds. Some are from planets I have never heard of. Each one is a possibility, a future flower that might bloom if someone gives it a chance. He placed one seed in her palm. This is from a moonweep. Your daughter planted the parent flower. If you take this seed home and plant it in her memorial garden, part of her will keep growing. Forever. Yonwa stared at the tiny seed in her hand. It was so small, so fragile. A single breath could blow it away. But inside it was the potential for life, for beauty, for something that would last long after both of them were gone. Her throat felt tight. You would give this to me, after I threatened to destroy everything you built. You did not destroy it, Junho said simply. That is what matters. On the flagship Eternal Dawn, Admiral T-Sun paced back and forth in his quarters. Something was wrong. The Queen had been on the station for hours now. She was supposed to retrieve something and give the order to destroy it. Instead, she had sent her guards away and was apparently having a private conversation with a human janitor. A janitor. Admiral T-Sun had served in the Velkari military for 40 years. He had watched Yonwa rise from princess to queen to conqueror. He had believed in her vision of Velkari dominance. But lately, something had changed. Ever since the princess died, the queen had become unpredictable, emotional, weak. And now this. He called a meeting with 3 other senior officers he trusted. They gathered in a secure room where no surveillance could reach them. The queen is compromised, T-Sun said without any introduction. She is showing mercy to a human. She is allowing sentiment to interfere with her judgment. If this continues, the empire will fall. What do you suggest? Asked one of the officers. T-Sun's yellow eyes narrowed. We remove her, quietly. We tell the fleet that she was killed by an assassin on the station. Then we destroy the station with her body inside. No one will ever know what really happened. The other officers exchanged nervous glances. What T-Sun was suggesting was treason. If they failed, they would all die screaming. But if they succeeded, they would control the empire. One by one, they nodded their agreement. Admiral T-Sun smiled coldly. In 1 hour, Queen Yonwa would be dead, and the age of mercy would be over. Junho was teaching Queen Yonwa how to properly water a moonweep when Bora's voice came through the garden speakers. Junho, I am detecting unusual activity on the flagship. Several shuttles have launched and are heading toward the station. Their weapons are armed. Yonwa stood up immediately. Her military instincts, sharpened by decades of war, kicked in at once. How many shuttles? 4 shuttles carrying approximately 30 soldiers each. They have not responded to standard communication requests. T-Sun, Yonwa's voice was bitter. I should have known he would try something like this eventually. Junho looked confused. What is happening? Why are your own soldiers attacking? Because I showed weakness. Yonwa laughed, but there was no humor in it. I sat in a garden and talked about my feelings with a human. My admiral thinks that means I am no longer fit to rule. He is probably telling everyone that I have gone mad. Have you? Yonwa looked at him. For a moment she did not answer. Then she shook her head slowly. No, for the first time in 2 years I think I am finally becoming sane again. Then we need to survive this. Yonwa raised her head proudly. This is my battle, human. You should hide. Find a safe place until this is over. Junho crossed his arms. I am not hiding. This is my garden, my home. If someone wants to bring violence here, they will have to deal with me. You are unarmed, untrained. You have no way to fight trained Velkari soldiers. I know, Junho smiled slightly, but I have something better than weapons. I have Bora. He turned toward the nearest speaker. Bora, are you listening? Always, Junho. Remember the emergency protocols we discussed, the ones I hoped we would never need. I remember them. Are you sure you want to activate them? They could be dangerous. Only to people who mean us harm. Junho looked at Yonhwa. I hope you do not mind, but I made some modifications to the station's systems over the years, just in case. Yonhwa stared at him with something like amazement. You prepared for this? I prepared for everything. When you live alone in space for 3 years, you have a lot of time to think about what could go wrong. The sound of heavy boots echoed from the corridor outside the garden. The first soldiers had arrived. Junho could hear them shouting orders to each other, getting into formation. Stay behind me, Yonhwa said, stepping forward. Even without weapons, even outnumbered, she was still a queen. She would not hide. No, Junho stepped past her. Stay behind me, trust me. Before she could argue, the garden doors burst open. Admiral T-Sun walked in, surrounded by a dozen armed soldiers. His yellow eyes swept across the room and locked onto Yonhwa. Your Majesty, he said, his voice dripping with fake respect. You have been spending a lot of time with our human friend here. Some of the officers are concerned about your mental state. They asked me to escort you back to the flagship for a medical examination. You mean they asked you to kill me? Yonhwa replied coldly. Do not insult my intelligence, T-Sun. I know a coup when I see one. Such harsh words. T-Sun spread his forearms in a gesture of innocence. I am only doing what is best for the Empire. A queen who weeps over flowers is not fit to rule. Surely you understand. He looked at Junho with contempt. And you, human, I do not know what magic you used to bewitch our queen, but it ends now. Kill him. 2 soldiers raised their weapons. Junho did not move. He just spoke clearly and calmly. Bora Protocol Greenhouse, now. Several things happened at once. The lights in the garden went out completely, leaving only the soft glow of the moonweeps. The air vents opened with a hissing sound, releasing a thin white mist into the room, and the doors sealed shut with a heavy clang. What is this? T-Sun shouted. What are you doing? The mist you are breathing is a powerful sedative, Junho explained. His voice was calm despite the chaos around him. I developed it myself using compounds from the plants in this garden. It will not kill you, but you will fall asleep in approximately 30 seconds. You are bluffing. T-Sun aimed his weapon at Junho. I will shoot you before I fall. Then shoot. T-Sun pulled the trigger. Nothing happened. He pulled it again and again, still nothing. Bora also disabled all weapons on this deck, Junho continued. A small electromagnetic pulse, targeted only at weapon systems. I designed it 3 years ago when I first started worrying about pirates. The soldiers began to stumble. The mist was working faster than expected. One by one, they dropped to their knees, their weapons clattering uselessly to the floor. Admiral T-Sun was the last to fall. He tried to crawl toward Yonhwa, his eyes full of hatred. This is not over, he gasped. It is for you, Yonhwa said. She stood over him with royal dignity as his eyes closed and his body went still. When it was finished, Junho walked over to the ventilation panel and pressed a few buttons. The sedative mist began to clear, replaced by fresh air. The lights came back on. Yonhwa turned to look at him. Her expression was unreadable. You could have done this at any time, she said. When I first arrived with my guards, you could have put us all to sleep and escaped. Probably, Junho agreed. Why did you not? He thought about the question. It was a good one. He had been afraid when she arrived. He had expected to die, but something had told him to wait to see what would happen. I think I knew you were not here to destroy things, he finally said. I could see it in your face when you looked at the moonweeps. You were not looking at enemies. You were looking at memories. Yonhwa shook her head slowly. I will never understand your species. That is okay. I do not always understand us either. She laughed. It was a real laugh, warm and surprised, as if she had forgotten she was capable of such a sound. The next few hours were busy. Yonhwa contacted the rest of her fleet and explained what had happened. Most of the officers had not been part of T-Sun's conspiracy and were horrified to learn about the attempted coup. The traitors were arrested and put in cells on the flagship to await trial. When things finally calmed down, Yonhwa returned to the garden. Junho was there, as always, checking on his plants and making sure none of them had been damaged in the excitement. "I have decided not to destroy the station," she said. Junho looked up with a slight smile. "I am glad to hear it. In fact, I have decided to do the opposite." Yonhwa sat down on the stone bench that was quickly becoming her favorite spot. "I am going to reopen peace negotiations with the Galactic Council. I am going to announce it tomorrow." "That is a big change." "Yes, it is." She looked at the moonweeps glowing softly nearby. "For 2 years I told myself that peace was weakness, that the only way to honor my daughter was to make the universe fear her mother, but I was wrong." She reached out and touched one of the silver petals. So never wanted fear. She wanted beauty. She wanted life. The best way to honor her is to let beautiful things grow, not to burn them down. Junho sat down beside her, leaving a respectful distance between them. "What happens now?" Now I need to rebuild trust with species I have terrorized for years. It will not be easy. Many will not believe that I have changed. Some will try to take advantage of what they see as weakness." "And the garden?" Yonhwa looked at him seriously. "I want you to be my advisor." Junho blinked. "I am a janitor." "You are the man who taught the Silence Bringer how to hope again. That is worth more than all the military advisors in the galaxy." She paused. "But I know you love this station. So here is my offer. I will send you seeds and cuttings from every world in my empire. I will provide you with resources to build the greatest botanical garden in the universe. And in return, whenever I need to remember why peace matters, I will come here and sit with you among the flowers." Junho was quiet for a long moment. He looked around at his garden, the place he had built with his own hands over 3 years of loneliness. It was already beautiful, but with resources from across the empire, it could become something truly extraordinary. A living memorial to everyone who had ever lost something precious. A place where destroyed things could bloom again. "I accept," he said. Yonhwa smiled. She reached into her robes and pulled out the moonweep seed he had given her earlier. "Then let us begin. Teach me how to plant this." Junho handed her a small pot filled with soil. He guided her hands, showing her how deep to press the seed, how much water to add, where to place it so it would get the right amount of light. When they finished, Yonhwa held up the pot and examined it with wonder. "Now what?" she asked. "Now we wait," Junho said. "We check on it every day. We adjust if something seems wrong. We give it time to grow." "That sounds like a lot of patience." "It is, but the best things always take time." Outside the station windows, the Velkari fleet hung silently in space. Tomorrow, those ships would carry messages of peace to dozens of worlds. Former enemies would become trading partners. Old wounds would begin to heal. But that was tomorrow. Today, in a small garden on a forgotten station, a human janitor and an alien queen sat side by side, watching the stars and waiting for flowers to bloom. And somewhere in the universe, in whatever place souls go after they leave their bodies, Princess So smiled at her moonweeps and knew that everything would be okay.